raft of new sanctions have been announced against Belarus by Western countries over the forced landing of a passenger plane in Minsk last month to detain a critic of the authoritarian president Alexander Lukashenko. Iran's president-elect Ebrahim Raisi has spoken out for the first time since winning the election. He says the country's foreign policy will not be limited by the 2015 nuclear deal with world powers. He also urged the US to lift all sanctions on Iran. The organisers of the Tokyo Olympics say they're going to allow spectators in stadiums during the Games, but they'll limit the number to 50% of the stadium capacity. There's also a ban on talking loudly or cheering. And at football's European Championships, Austria have secured Group C's second automatic qualifying spot after they defeated Ukraine 1-0.
Iran's president-elect, Ebrahim Raisi, says his country's foreign policy will not be limited by the 2015 International Nuclear Agreement. Workers in Taiwan's representative office in Hong Kong are leaving after city officials demanded they sign a document supporting mainland China's claim to Taiwan. The United States' new top diplomat for North Korea says he looks forward to a positive answer from the North on possible nuclear weapons talks. And Ethiopians complete ballots in parliamentary elections, but 100 of 547 areas cannot vote.
We start with a much speculated figure about the upcoming Tokyo Games. Officials have decided how many Olympic spectators will be cheering from the stands amid the coronavirus threat.
At all venues, the number of spectators will be limited to 50% of the facility's capacity and up to 10,000. That will not include students and school children invited to watch the games or their teachers.
Hashimoto announced the decision after a meeting between the Games Organizing Committee, the Japanese government, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, and the International Olympic and Paralympic Committees. It's in line with the Japanese government's plan to ease the capacity limits from 5,000 to 10,000 next month after intensive virus measures are lifted. Organizers had already decided they won't welcome any overseas spectators. The Japanese public has been concerned a sudden movement of people to and from the events could cause the virus to spread.
If spectators are allowed, more staff members will be needed to take care of them. I wonder whether they can take thorough antivirus measures.
I think that 10,000 people is reasonable in terms of the scale of the venues, but at the same time, I think that the number of people will really liven up the venues.
For athletes gearing up to compete in the Games, the issue is emotional.
Spectators gave us power. As an athlete, I want to play in front of a big audience.
I want to perform in a way that will inspire people watching the games on TV.
But capacity rules could change. Hashimoto says, depending on the situation, the Games might be held without spectators. And Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide told reporters on Monday he won't hesitate to ban spectators if a state of emergency is issued. The government's top coronavirus advisor and 25 other health experts said the most desirable option is for athletes to compete without an audience. The Olympics will kick off on July 23rd. The officials have not decided on the spectators for the Paralympics, which will start about a month later. They plan to make that call by July 16th. India's Olympic officials say plans to quarantine its athletes when they arrive in Japan for the Tokyo Games are discriminatory and highly unfair. Organizers will require a 3-day isolation period for athletes from India and some neighboring countries where a coronavirus variant is spreading. The Indian Olympic Association sent a letter to organizers. It points out that athletes are allowed into the Olympic Village only 5 days before their events, and if 3 of those days are wasted, there's not enough time to train. The Tokyo Organizing Committee says ordinary travelers from India are quarantined for 10 days. It says participants in the Games will be isolated for 7 days before their departure and 3 days after they arrive. The committee says the athletes can train during the 3-day period as long as the team submits a plan in advance. Committee officials say they'll explain these rules more clearly. Tokyo, Osaka, and 5 other Japanese prefectures are moving to a new phase of heightened antivirus measures, having ended a state of emergency. The easing restrictions are good news for struggling restaurants. They'll still need to close early, but can once again serve alcoholic drinks.
If I can't serve alcohol, then it's hard to get any customers at all. So I'm grateful I can serve it, even if until 7 p.m.
Popular tourist venues are also getting back to business. The Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum has reopened just in time to allow visitors to reflect on the 1945 atomic bombing nearly 76 years after it changed life there forever.
I've been waiting to reopen the museum ahead of August the 6th, when the number of students on school trips and visiting researchers will begin to increase.
But in the southern prefecture of Okinawa, the state of emergency will continue for another 3 weeks. The number of new infections has been declining, but the medical system remains under strain and residents are worried.
I think it's important to reduce the number of new cases to nearly 0, so the state of emergency may need to be extended until many people have been vaccinated.
Japan is relying on companies to help speed up a slow start to its vaccination drive. Up until now, the focus has been on the elderly. But firms are now giving the jab to their own employees. Japan has provided at least 1 dose to about 17% of the population. Health authorities across the country reported over 860 new cases and 35 deaths on Monday. Myanmar's military leader has arrived in Moscow for an international security conference. The visit by Senior General Min Aung Hlaing comes just days after the UN called for a stop to the flow of arms to the country. Myanmar state-run media said Russia's defense ministry invited the junta chief to the conference. Min Aung Hlaing is also slated to meet senior officials of the Russian government and military. On Friday, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution condemning the violence in Myanmar and calling for a halt on arms sales to the country. Russia sells Myanmar much of its weapons. Meanwhile, Myanmar athletes and celebrities are calling for protests against the military takeover. A contestant in an international beauty pageant held in Bangkok in late March says many people are dying in her country and appealed for international support in the fight against the coup. Han Lei, a university student, spoke to NHK on Monday in the Thai capital, where she's been staying.
There has a military coup in Myanmar. So at that time, I was in Myanmar and I also protest on the street with my friends too. So at that time, before I'm joining the pageant, I decided that I am a beauty queen and I have my voice and I can use my voice at Myanmar's celebrations.
Han Lei said she's worried about her family and her friends in Myanmar. She said some are in jail and others are hiding out in jungles. She said she's sought international backing for the national unity government formed by ousted lawmakers.
Democracy is very important for a country. Right now, we lost our democracy. That's why what is happening in Myanmar, everywhere can see. If you have a democracy in your country, you can freely think and you can freely do whatever you want.
Han Lei says she wants to extend her visa so she can stay in Thailand. China is increasingly frustrated by deepening ties between the U.S. and Taiwan over vaccine aid. China's foreign ministry has denounced the U.S. for supplying Taiwan with 2.5 million coronavirus vaccine doses.
We urge the U.S. side not to seek political manipulation in the name of vaccine assistance and stop interfering in China's domestic affairs.
Zhao said Taiwan's Democratic Progressive Party has blocked Chinese-made vaccines despite Beijing's offer to help. He also accused Taiwan of neglecting the lives and health of its people. The Moderna vaccine from the U.S. arrived in Taiwan on Sunday. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen expressed gratitude, saying the United States has provided a helping hand at a time of difficulty. The new U.S. Special Envoy for North Korea says Washington hopes its offer for talks with the country brings a positive response soon.
We continue to hope that the DPRK will respond positively to our outreach and our offer to meet anywhere, anytime, without preconditions.
Song Kim met Japanese and South Korean senior officials in Seoul on Monday to discuss North Korean issues. Last week, the North's leader, Kim Jong-un, said his country needs to prepare for both dialogue and confrontation with the U.S. In an interview with ABC television on Sunday, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said Washington sees the comment as an interesting signal.
We are awaiting a clearer signal from Pyongyang as to whether they are prepared to sit down at the table to begin working in that direction.
The Biden administration has completed its review of U.S. policy on North Korea. Washington seeks to achieve denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula through diplomacy. Jakarta has been home to a theater troupe whose goal was not just to stage performances, but to serve as a bridge between Indonesia and Japan. The company was disbanded in April. NHK World's Ferdinand Karsten talked to people involved with the group.
About 800 young Indonesians have taken part in Enjuku since it was formed in 2009. They appeared in Japanese-style musical dramas with all the dialogue and lyrics in Japanese. Kaikiri Sugako is a former language teacher who founded the company.
Many children ran away when they saw Japanese people while studying the language, so I wanted to teach them practical skills.
Kaikiri also explained manners to the young troop members before they headed out in the world. Haryo Bintang Akda belonged for 12 years. Not only did he perform, but he also served as assistant director and coached the younger members. He is a company man now. His education and experience at Enjuku have served him well in the workplace. Haryo's firm operates Japanese restaurants in Indonesia. He communicates with his Japanese colleagues in their language. Japanese businesses in Indonesia appreciate Enjuku's work. They have been known to offer career opportunities to troop members.
I would say that the attitudes and manners of people who came out of Enjuku are wonderful. This is because of the solid teaching of our teacher, Kaikiri.
The group made its fateful decision last year. Kaikiri believed its purpose had been fulfilled after 12 years. Then came the pandemic, forcing the cancellation of performances in Jakarta and Japan. The final production was streamed on YouTube, as a public showing would have been impossible. All the members watched at the disbandment ceremony. The story was about 8 bandits who stole from the rich and gave to the poor. Haryo played a merchant.
The name Enjuku will disappear, but our bonds will remain forever.
I'm a tough person, but our members never gave up on me and tackled various projects. I hope they will not give up easily and become the kind of people who aim high.
Although her company has shut down, Kaikiri's work will live on through the strong and positive effect she has had on hundreds of young Indonesians.